can we teach this person that has been living in this forest all her life and just like buying and selling things with pebbles, can we tell her about the monetary, what was it? Modern monetary.
You can see I've done such a great job that you are. What have we just been talking about?
Modern monetary
theory. This is the MMT Podcast with Patricia Pino and Christian Riley. Hi, I'm Christian Riley and welcome to the Modern Monetary Theory Podcast. You can find us on Twitter at MMT Podcast, and you can support the show by going to patreon.com/MMT Podcast. For as little as $1 a month, you can get early access to all our episodes and patron-only episodes. A big thank you to all our supporters so far. At the beginning there, you heard comedian and author Shappi Khorsandi, and in this episode, I attempt to pitch MMT to Shappi. We recorded it a while ago. I'm not sure how well I did, but I figured it's the holidays and it might make a nice break from the norm. Huge thanks to Shappi for allowing herself to be a test subject. As you probably already know, she's a very funny performer and writer, and she usually goes on podcasts and TV shows to share her talent with fans. But in this episode, the format doesn't really give acres of space for her to play around in, and that's my fault. But if you don't mind listening on, I'll try not to waste your attention, and hopefully you'll appreciate why I'm like this about this topic. So if you're a first-time listener or primarily a Shappi fan, apologies if this is not what you're expecting, and thanks again to Shappi for jumping the hurdles and getting genuinely engaged with the subject. If you're still listening, this podcast series is all about money. And when I say money, I don't mean how to manage your finances, and I don't mean the financial journalism genre I'm going to call everything's screwed, there's nothing you can do about it, but here's some big words you could use to make yourself sound clever at dinner parties. This series is about money as a system. It's about why these pieces of paper with pictures of dead people on them have the effect they have in the world. And to me, it's actually a positive story. And even if you hear the story and you don't agree with me, it's still one that you need to know. Ultimately, money and its consequences can be under our democratic control if we want it to be. And so this podcast series is all about how we get to that better world that works for everyone. We talk about what money is, where it comes from, and why understanding those two things is vital for our survival. So in this conversation, there are things we didn't get to and things I wish I'd said differently, so I'll just fill in the gaps here. The first idea I try to introduce is that the sole issuer of a thing can't run out of that thing that they issue. So just like a comedian can't run out of the show tickets she issues, a currency issuing government can't run out of the currency it issues. Shappi doesn't collect her tickets from ticket holders before she puts them on sale. She has to issue the tickets first before there can be any out there to be collected. And the same goes for a currency issuing government. It has to issue its currency into existence first via spending before anybody in the non-government, that's you and me, has any currency to save with or, mind-blowingly, to have any currency to pay taxes with. Yes, you heard that correctly. Government spending has to come first before taxes can be paid, not the other way around. A few things follow from that. In the conversation, Shappi asks, what happens if the government just issues money without collecting taxes? And typical me, what I didn't say is the short answer, which is that the government doesn't need your money. The government needs you to need its money. And that's what taxes are there for. The government needs to spend something to be able to provision itself, to build schools and hospitals and pay teachers and nurses. And if the government decrees that something, some token, is acceptable for the payment of taxes, then that thing becomes currency. currency, something that people need to get hold of to pay taxes to avoid serious penalties. And that's why the governments of the UK, the US, Japan, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and many more choose their own money tokens, their dollars, their pounds, their yen, to be the currency, to give them full financial freedom to implement their policies. And that's what puts these government-issued currencies at the top of the money hierarchy in their respective countries. So just to be really clear, no progressive MMT advocate is complaining about paying taxes or trying to make a case for zero taxes. We all agree that taxes are crucial, just not for the reason many people think. Currency is currency because it's a tax credit. And because everybody needs to pay taxes, all goods and services come to be priced in the state's currency, and that enables the government to spend it into existence to provision public purpose. That brings us to the next tricky concept, which is that when taxes are paid back to the government, the reverse operation happens and money goes back to where it came from, which is nowhere. And some people find that really challenging. So let me just defend the assertion by saying that really is how spreadsheets work. To paraphrase economist Ellis Winningham, take a calculator and type the number 5,000 into it. The display reads 5,000. Now hit the minus key and type the number 2,000 into it and press the equals key. The display now reads 3,000. Where did the 2,000 go? Where did it travel to? To the same place as your tax payment. As MMT founder Warren Mosler puts it, the US government neither has nor doesn't have any dollars. It's the scorekeeper for the dollar. Asking where the points for a scoreboard come from or worrying about the scorekeeper running out of points is not something we do if we understand what a scoreboard actually is. Also, I didn't explain inflation in any depth, so in the show notes I've linked to our episode 65, which is all about inflation, and our episodes 88 and 89, which are about hyperinflation. But regarding the too much spending chasing too few goods type of inflation, which is not the only type of inflation, but it's the only one people care about when they think about government spending, I'll just say that in the broad strokes, yes, when everything in the shopping centre that is our economy has been purchased and some agent in the economy wants to spend past that limit, there's a potential for a bidding war between the government and the private sector, which might drive up prices. And this brings us to another function of taxation, which is that it removes spending power from the private sector to create space for the government to spend into. But maybe a more practical way to look at inflation is to look at the way we deal with it right now. And that is we ensure that there's always slack in the economy by making sure there's always a permanent level of unemployment in the economy. The government gets its economists to figure out how much unemployment they can get away with and still stay in office, and they use this buffer stock of unemployed humans having a miserable life to control inflation. MMT economists advocate swapping that buffer stock of unemployed people for a pool of employed people, hired via a government job guarantee scheme and paid a socially inclusive wage to do jobs decided by the community where the unemployment occurs. The job guarantee job is voluntary on the part of the worker. It's not workfare. It doesn't replace existing benefits. It's an extra option to what we have now, and it's aimed at eliminating involuntary unemployment, people who want a job but can't find one. So if there's too much spending power in the economy, we might see inflation, and if there's too little, we certainly get unemployment. So the ideal level of spending power, therefore, would be, at the minimum, a level of spending that makes sure that everybody that wants a job can get one. And it's impossible to target that through discretionary government spending because it's a moving target. And so the job guarantee delivers it through automatic spending. And that's why it's literally the only policy proposal in MMT. So just to underline, MMT is not the economic school of thought that says a government should just spend and spend until it hits inflation and then raise taxes until the economy cools down. MMT is the economic school of thought that recognizes that currency systems use buffer stocks for price stability and that using an employed pool of labor is better than using an unemployed pool of labor by any objective measure. And until we change to that system, we're guaranteeing unemployment has to be endured by someone in the economy, and that adds up to millions of people being damaged day in, day out by something we could easily fix. There's more to know about the job guarantee, and you can listen to our episode 47 with leading expert Pavlina Chernova for more details. Later on in the conversation, I mentioned the Labour Party's fiscal credibility rule, and we have an episode about that with Richard Murphy. That's our episode 8, and I've linked to that in the show notes and to where you can get hold of Shappi's books and tour tickets. And as ever, I've linked to where you can support this podcast financially via patreon.com/MMT podcast. Support starts at $1 a month, which is 72 British pence at the time of recording, and no matter what level of support you give, you get early access to all of our episodes and patron-only episodes where you can ask me and Patricia MMT questions. We are 100% listener funded. Your financial support really helps keep the show going, and your support in other ways, whether it's by recommending us to other people or just by listening and spreading the word about this stuff, really helps too. So thanks for the time you put into understanding MMT. Let's dive in. Welcome to the podcast, Shappi Khorsandi, author and comedian.
Hello.
What I'm going to try and do here is something I've never done before, so apologies in advance. I'm trying to teach myself how to teach modern monetary theory. I'm going to share with you what I think I know about it, and then you tell me whether it's landed or not, and that's it really. So there's no right answers, there's no wrong answers, there's just me getting it wrong. If anybody's going to get it wrong, it's going to be me.
Can I just say something? I'm kind of giggling because because I didn't know what this was about until this moment, and you've clearly got the person that you know to be the least sort of not interested but focused to talk about or understand these things.
That's right. This is the acid test.
So this is like, yeah, I am the idiot. I get it. Go on.
Oh yeah, that's why I picture. Yeah. Here's the first question: where do you think money comes from?
Money comes from the mint. No, money comes from the economy. You know, people make money and they hire people. They sell things. It's money comes from buying and selling things.
Okay, so I asked you to get a £10 note.
Yes.
Here's your £10 note.
Thank you.
Where did this come from?
It physically came from the bank when I went in yesterday, and I had to write a cash check to myself because I've lost my card. And it is money in the bank earned from my performances as a comedian.
The people that gave you that money, where did it come from?
The Royal Mint.
Okay, so it goes... Okay.
A money factory.
Right, okay.
There's a money tree.
I reckon that's pretty close, yeah. Money tree.
Yeah, they print money.
Yeah. I mean, there's stuff written on it as well. I don't think I've ever actually... here we go. I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £10. That's a £10 note. And that's the Bank of England saying that they will promise to pay you £10.
Sure. Not Florence Nightingale. Okay.
That is really the essence of modern monetary theory, or it's one of the key insights, that if you have a pound in your pocket, unless it's fake, it came from the government.
Yes.
Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah.
Because the government have a monopoly on creating pounds. And notice I'm saying pounds and not money, because money is quite a broad word. I found online a picture of a tour ticket of yours. So here it is. That's a Shappi Khorsandi ticket. When somebody wants to come and see you, they buy one of those.
Yes.
And I don't know what this crazy person was doing, because they put it up for sale on eBay. And that's why there's a photograph of it.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, the price is £16.
Yes.
Right. This tour ticket is your money. You issued it. You said, if you come to me with this, I will give you something. I promise to pay you a performance. Just like the Bank of England said, I promise to pay you £10, right?
Yeah.
So that's your money.
Yes.
Can you ever run out of these?
Well, yeah.
Under what circumstance? You can print as many as you want, right?
If people didn't want to buy them, if people didn't want to come to the show...
Yeah, sure.
Then I wouldn't print anymore.
Yeah, but you print as many as you will, as many as you can fit into the auditorium, right?
Yes.
And if there was demand for more, you'd do 2 nights and print more.
Yes.
Yeah? So
yes.
You're the monopoly issuer of these. Oh,
I am the monopoly issuer of tickets for Bristol Old Vic if I have a performance
It's your
there.
performance, yeah, exactly. So now some people say, the Bank of England creates the money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, to say the Bank of England creates the money, it'd be a bit like saying Ticketmaster created that ticket, or whatever agency. Mm-hmm. It's true in a sense that somebody else printed it, but with modern monetary theory, we talk about the government as a consolidated entity. So the government agrees on a budget. It says we're going to employ this many nurses, for instance, and then the bank accounts that need crediting to make that happen, to send those paychecks out, the government tells the Bank of England to credit the necessary bank accounts, and that's it. That's where the pounds that translate to those people's wages come from. The government emits the pounds rather than saying, well, the Royal Mint printed the £10 note. It's like saying, well, yeah, that's true, but the government decided to make that happen, just like you decided to make those tickets happen.
Right.
In a sense, the ticket is your money. When they return the ticket to you, you rip it up, right? I asked you when I came into the house, I said, have you got an old tour ticket of yours? And you said no. I genuinely wanted to do it with a real ticket. That's why I went online to look for a ticket. And, of course, why not? What do you need them for? What do you need the tickets for? If you want to sell some more tickets tomorrow to another performance, you'll just get on the phone to whoever you need to, and they'll print some more up, right?
Yeah.
This is sort of an analogy to try and emphasize how a government can't run out of money. Does that land?
Yeah, no, I get that, yeah. They wouldn't run out of money. They wouldn't physically run out of money. But say if no one was interested in coming to my shows, then that ticket wouldn't be worth £16.
But it would still be the price of the ticket, right?
It would still be the price of the ticket.
You could set the wrong price and have nobody show up, but you're still the monopoly issuer, right?
I get that. So the governments can't run out of money, but they
can't run out of pounds is the way I'd say it, just to be a bit more
they
precise.
can't run out of pounds, but they always do.
What makes you say that?
Well, just knowing that some of us mums have to chip into a school event. So the government's told the school that there is no money, there are cuts. And I see the effect that has, obviously, on the schools that they run. And then it's hard to comprehend that loss of money, that we have no money, because it must be somewhere. And it feels like in a first world country to say that we've run out of money, that's their perception of it. It's this particular government deciding where to allocate the money that they do have. So that's as far as I can understand it, that it's this government that is deciding where to put the money, deciding where to tighten their belts. Other areas, belts are very loose, So that's how I understand it. So when I'm told by the government that there is no money, that we have to make these cuts, I don't buy it. So it makes me vote for a different government. So that's the only power that I feel I have in the economy, is by voting for who I think will use the collective shared money equally.
What you just said there really underlines why I'm really passionate about modern monetary theory and just macroeconomics in general, because the government told us there's no money, we've run out. You remember in 2008, that was the mantra everywhere. We've run out, we're going to have to cut this, we're going to have to cut that. At the same time, they were bailing out the banks, as we heard it. They were giving free money to the banks, because if the banks go down, it's going to be game over for society, so we have to look after them. And I was thinking, how come they can make money available for that, but not for this?
Yeah.
I read, I drilled into it, and it turns out they can't run out of money. They can't run out of pounds, because, as we've talked about, they emit pounds when they make their spending decisions. So the whole basis of austerity, the idea that parents are going to have to dig into their income to plug a shortfall of the things that their kids are doing at school, it's pernicious. It's a policy decision rather than a real constraint on the economy. There are real constraints on the economy. If there isn't a single unemployed teacher looking to get a teaching job, then you can't afford to buy a teacher. Yeah. But there are people who would love to train as teachers who, we could pay. So what MMT, modern monetary theory, says is a government that's sovereign in its own currency, like we are in the UK, we're sovereign in the pound, can afford to buy anything that's for sale in those pounds. They'll only become a problem if the thing you're trying to buy is not for sale. So back to our analogy where your ticket is your money. They come to you and return to you what you issued. Yeah, your ticket, and you give them what you promised to give them for the ticket. Now, the difference between your money, which is your ticket, and the government's money, I'm going to illustrate now, leaning heavily on a presentation given by another economist called Warren Mosler. And what he does is he takes out his business card and he goes, here's my business card. Would anybody like to stay and clean the floor after I'm finished talking, because I will pay you one of these per hour? And he says, any takers? They go, no takers. He goes, okay, 2 per hour, no takers, because they know this is a worthless piece of paper. Then he goes, now I'm going to add one more thing. There's a guy at the door on the way out with a 9mm machine gun, and you can't get out of the room without one of these cards. Now who wants to work for one of these per hour to get the floor cleaned? And then the idea is, you've got takers for this otherwise worthless piece of paper. And then he says, the guy at the door is the tax man. The tax man turns litter into money. And that's how it works with modern money. The state comes first. The government goes, I've been elected on a platform of, I'm going to spend on this much money into schools, this much money into the NHS. I'm going to, we're going to have all this kind of infrastructure. And so my authority to make these things happen is legitimate. And now I have to create this situation where there's a guy at the door with a 9mm. And so that's the tax man. Your taxes are payable not in, seashells or gold or all these things that we think are precious. Your taxes are payable in the pound, and that's what gives it value. So we flip back to your tickets being your money. You say, what happens if nobody buys my tickets? Then, they're worthless. And you're right, but imagine if you were holding up your tickets and say, no, you need these because these are currency now. You need these to pay taxes with. This is worth £3,000 off your tax bill. If the government sort of said, yeah, that's good for £3,000 worth of taxes, that becomes worth £3,000. That's what money is ultimately, is basically money off your tax bill. It could go up and down against the euro, the pound. It could go up and down against all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, it's internally stable. Just like these business cards, if we go with the thought experiment of paying people to clean the floor with 1 card per hour, and then the people take it and they pay their taxes with it. The floor gets cleaned, the taxation system works, and that's what drives currency. That's the difference between your money, which is your tour ticket, and the state's money. That's what makes the state's money special, taxation.
That's pretty clear, because we have to pay taxes. That is, no one can get away with not paying taxes without a criminal charge. Also
think about VAT as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, nobody goes, well, I don't agree with the government on moral grounds, so I'm going to pay for this item, but I'm not going to pay VAT because I don't like what you guys are doing in Iraq.
Yeah.
The bill, the VAT that gets charged, it shoots through everything.
Yeah. What I really like about America is that they give you 2 prices. They tell you the VAT price on everything that you buy. So they add it at the till later. So I didn't know this. And the first time I went to America, I bought this book and they said it's whatever, $10. And I was like, oh, but no. On the ticket, it says it's, $9 something, whatever. And they were like, yeah, but tax. And I was like, oh, wow. So every time you're very aware of tax. I don't think we are in this country. We sort of just blindly buy things without really noticing or considering how much VAT there is, and until there's a budget and we are shown exactly. But on a day-to-day level, I'm kind of clueless to how much tax is on the various things that I buy, be it petrol or booze or whatever. And that's when it becomes problematic as well, is how they decide those taxing scales. It doesn't always seem just.
There is a tax justice movement. I'll just throw that in there if you're interested. Because I think it is important. It's important for democracy that taxes are just. Let me just see if this thing has landed, though. The guy at the door with the machine gun collecting the cards, the tax, they're not taking the cards off them to be able to spend them again. If I want to spend them again, I'll just take some new ones off the pile because I create them. So the idea that taxes fund spending is completely wrong.
I get what you're saying. I'm just trying to, because in the way that you display it in your analogy, it means it comes across as you have to pay the tax man, otherwise you die. You can't be a part of the world. So it's, in order to become a part of society and the benefits of it, you have to pay those taxes. But what you're saying is...
You have to pay the taxes because there's somebody forcing you to pay tax, otherwise you lose your liberty.
Yeah. So what would you say, how would we pay for public services then if it weren't for taxes, if we weren't forced to pay taxes?
Well, I've got my pile of business cards here.
Right.
How many of these can I make?
As many as you like.
Exactly. How many pounds can the government make? As many as they like to get the job done. So the purpose of taxes is not to create revenue and then take the business cards, take the pounds off you, put them in a safe somewhere and then draw them out to pay for nurses and stuff. It's just completely not what happens. The taxes are there to make you need the money to drive the currency. Oh, right.
Yeah. Okay. I've got to work because I've got to pay this tax.
Yeah. And obviously not 100% of what you make as income you give back to the tax man. The stuff that you don't give to the tax man is now in your bank account as savings. And some of it's in your wallet as physical cash. There's a bit of it over there. But that's now the private sector's money. When the government takes tax money off you, that's it. They just delete it. They don't put it anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere. It's just deleted off a spreadsheet.
Yeah.
Let's say there's a bunch of us in this room. Let's say there's 50 of us in this room, and I've got my business cards, and I do the trick, where I tell them to clean the floor, to earn one of these, to get out of the room, to pay. And there's 50 people in the room. If I decide for some reason that I'm only going to spend 45 of these, best case scenario is 5 people don't get a job.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where unemployment comes from. Mm-hmm. It's a policy choice. When I put the man at the door with a machine gun and tell everybody they need one of these to get out of the door, I've created 50 unemployed people. Because that's the definition of unemployment. People looking for paid work in the government's unit of account. Before the business cards, before the guy at the door, there was no unemployment. The people might have been doing nothing, but that's not how we would define unemployment. They're not looking for work. They're not looking for paid work. So this kind of, again, goes to another modern monetary theory insight that, like, unemployment is a monetary phenomenon. The government comes along, uses this taxation structure to provision itself, to get things done, to build hospitals, bridges, employ doctors and nurses, all the good stuff that we like. Mm. And then it actually spends more money than it needs to do that into the economy. And that money left over, the difference between what they've spent and what they've taken back as taxes, we call that the deficit, the difference between what they spend and what they take in. And we go, oh, that's really bad. The government's in deficit. And it's like, no, that's the money left over. That's in my bank account now. It's in your bank account. Mm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah.
So the government's deficit is the non-government, you and me, the non-government sector's
profit.
Exactly. So you can see now the Conservatives have been bragging about bringing the economy into surplus. So the idea is that they're pulling in more in tax than they're spending out. Can you see why that might be destructive?
Well, yeah, I don't want to do that.
Exactly. So the whole idea of fiscal responsibility, we need to tighten our belt as a government. It's like, well, that's bad for us. Mm. You need to loosen your belt because there's too many unemployed people. You haven't spent enough business cards into the economy to give everybody a job. We're back to that situation where there's 50 people in the room and I've only spent 45 cards.
Yes.
And so there's going to be 5 people looking for a job, 10% of the room looking for a job. And that's where we are in our economy right now with unemployment.
It's that sort of myth we are sold about austerity, isn't it? I don't even know if austerity has reduced the deficit.
But you get it now that like reducing the deficit is a really stupid idea with all this unemployment and underemployment as well. People who've just given up looking for work and gone back to live with their parents or whatever because you know they don't show up in the unemployment figures anymore. For instance,
no, that is true. So what are you saying is the solution then? Like what would be the ideal form of governance when it comes to money?
First of all, if a nation democratically agrees, like they would if you asked them that we want the NHS to be better funded, then we should create as many pounds as possible to make that ambition happen. But at the moment, we're being told, no, pounds are finite. And there's no money. We've run out of them. And there's this particularly pernicious thing that comes up in economics commentary and politics commentary called the household analogy.
Yeah.
You know, you won't go very far without a politician going, well, just like you, we have to balance our books. We can't spend more than we take in. And it's like, that is 100% incorrect.
Yeah. You
can spend more than you take in because you create, just like Shappi Khorsandi creates her tour tickets, you create pounds. You know, nobody's going to say to you, you can't create that many tickets. It'll create hyperinflation or something.
What's their motivation for doing that?
I mean,
what do they get out of putting the screws on people?
You know, we're not psychologists, but I think
that
it's
in
ideological.
their mind, why does that work? It's their ideology, but because so many people buy into that ideology, who are the people that are really benefiting from this current system?
I would say that politicians have to talk to people in ways that they understand. So the household analogy works, and it's working for their agenda, which is to reduce the public sector and, you know, gut the NHS, and then be able to point to it and go, look, the NHS is failing. You see, we've failed. We can't have social programs. We should let the private sector figure this out. And because all of that works, there's no impetus for them to talk in a different way to the public.
Right.
So that's kind of what my podcast is about, is if you're interested in economics and macroeconomics and wondering how we got here as a society, we're giving you the answers. And so we're trying to change the culture so that when people hear that household analogy come up, or they talk about government debt being a bad thing, you know, their debt is our asset, basically. We'll live in a culture where people go, no, don't try and sell us on that. That's rubbish. That's like, you know, that's like medieval thinking. That's not how money works now. And I think it's as important as being able to read and write now that people understand how modern money works, because it's been, if they hadn't started down this track of oh, we've run out of money, we've got to tighten our belts, and you know, we could have all lived in blissful ignorance. But like they started it, and there's a hefty movement of economists and activists who are like, let's make sure we win this fight. Our civilization's being gutted because of the way people think about these digits on a spreadsheet. That's all they are. That £10 note's not some scarce commodity that got dug out of the ground, and if we don't find it, enough of them, we're not going to be able to spend.
I remember being a kid and saying, I don't understand, why can't we just print more money when we need it? And
that's the right question to ask.
And then someone would answer just wow, economy, supply demand, which is what I said at the beginning of our chat, because that's the extent to which you sort of engage with it. Because, you know, to be really fair, to properly engage in this stuff, it's made to seem a lot more complicated than it is. It's like, well, you just don't understand economy, do you? Economics is this big mountain that only certain people can climb. But actually, I think you're quite right. In schools and in discussions, you can bring it right down to layman's terms and not think that money is something, the money heads, that's what we say a lot, you know, that only they deal with. It is a thing we need to talk about more in layman terms. Thank you for picking me as your Can we teach this person that has been living in this forest all her life and just like buying and selling things with pebbles, can we tell her about the monetary, what was it? Modern monetary.
You can see I've done such a great job that you are. What have we just been talking about?
Modern monetary
theory.
I knew it was okay.
Yeah, so in terms of like what an ideal situation would be, first of all, ideal situation would be an electorate that enough people, didn't have this medieval understanding of what money is.
Yeah.
It's a creature of the state. The government emits it. So when you've got a politician saying, we can't spend on this because we've got no money, they could say, we can't buy everybody a pony because there's this many million people and there's only this many thousand ponies. They could say that would be a true thing. Mm. But they can definitely say all the people we made unemployed through the austerity cuts, we'd definitely employ them again because they became unemployed. They became people looking for work in business cards or pounds once we cut their jobs under a false understanding. I'm being generous to them now. Like they falsely understood how money works. They definitely afford to be paying those people, but they cut their jobs based on the fact that we needed to quote unquote tighten our belts. The ideal position I want to get to is where everybody understands that, and then the politician that proposes not spending in a time of downturn, in a time when you've got unemployed people and you've got things that need doing. Our schools could be better, our teacher-pupil ratios could be better, everything could be better. Our hospitals could be better, our wait times could be better, and the people and the resources that we need to do that are available for sale in pounds. And the government creates pounds, so that's really why I'm trying to spread MMT. So thanks for listening to me ramble on. It's the worst thing you can be these days, is a man explaining things, but but I know that, but here I am. I find myself in that position. So any questions? I know you're dying to get out of the room and pay the tax man with my business card. More clean the
rabbit hutch. But how can we change this then? By changing government, is it going to be different under a Labour government?
That is a good point. Obviously, the Labour government have committed to spending and renationalising things like the rail. Personally, I think that's a good idea.
Yes, I do too.
But if you're going to go down the route of privatising these things, even the private sector needs more money to make those things better. And the way you increase money to the private sector is you cut taxes on you, me, everybody, lower VAT. That's kind of like giving us a pay raise.
Yeah.
That is, you could do that. If it turns out the country leans that way politically, that's also another way around it. But I think things like healthcare, developing the technology and the medicine and things like that, those things are a natural monopoly. What I mean is that the things required to develop a new drug or put in a new rail line that goes from here to there are so expensive in real terms. When I say real, I mean as opposed to nominal in name only. Like a house is real wealth. £100,000 is nominal wealth. So in real terms, the things you need to buy, the real things that you need to buy to build the railway from here to there or to develop a new drug or something are so expensive that you can't really have a competitive market. So yeah, anyway, Labour have committed to spending more on the NHS and renationalising things. And I like that. And I believe they'll do it. And I know they can do it because I know modern monetary theory. So I know that they can make the money available. But they have introduced this policy document called a fiscal credibility rule, which is kind of a piece of political posturing that was put out to appease the city. The people around the economic side of Labour have gone, we need to throw them a bone. And so they've written this thing called a fiscal credibility rule, which constrains spending. We've done a whole podcast about that, and there's quite a debate going on between the lefty economists, or so-called lefty economists, who came up with it, and the heterodox economists that me and my co-host, who's not here right now, Patricia, we're aligned with this other school of thought that says we shouldn't artificially constrain spending with a silly fiscal rule? What's the point? And they say actually written into the rule is we can suspend it at any time, but there's still quite a few clauses in the rule that says you can only suspend it if the Monetary Policy Committee at the Bank of England says it's okay to suspend it. It's not very democratic as we read it. People that I'm aligned with read it. But, I imagine this is the first time you're hearing about this. It's not really at the front of everybody's mind. But yeah,
you know what? It's the first time I'm engaging with it as well. And I think that's a really important thing because there's that thing where you get so embroiled in your own day-to-day to actually stop and question the way things are done and what you're told as a fact actually is more malleable than you imagined. I think that takes a level of engagement that most people aren't encouraged to have. They sort of disengage and have that attitude of, well, the experts are dealing with it. That tends to be the way a lot of us think.
I mean, I was disengaged with it for a long time because I didn't need to be engaged with it.
Yeah.
Things were ticking along nicely.
Yeah.
This was at a time before there was this really concerted attack on the welfare state. And it's always been under attack since inception, but it's really accelerated now.
It's accelerated, and the most ghastly thing about it, and what this government the right have done so well, they've done it so brilliantly that they've somehow managed to demonise those who are living in poverty and on the welfare state to a point that they've made themselves somehow look like the ones who are needy. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
They've somehow made themselves the right and I'm not necessarily talking about the Conservative Party. I'm not talking about them right now.
But strand of thought.
Yeah, this strand of thought have given this illusion that they are the ones who are the victims of all this. And they've done that bloody brilliantly.
Yeah, I mean, we could all learn a thing or two. But yeah, no, I totally agree. I totally agree. That's where a lot of the money is in politics, though, is in message making, in telling stories.
Yeah,
I guess that's kind of why I'm here, just trying to tell the other story of money. When I discovered modern monetary theory, and I've been reading about it and studying it for quite a few years, the light bulb went on and I was like, oh my God, the government can't run out of money. So why are we putting people out of work? Why are we slashing and spending on schools and education? And why don't we have the best country in the world? We could have that. And so I would get exactly. Well, yeah. I think this is the answer, because the household analogy, the way money works, the way we're told money works, and the way the story that we accept, this household analogy, it really suits an agenda, and it's not just the Conservatives. But excuse me, there's actually a through line of cats being a bit of a problem in this show. Hang on.
Sorry about that.
No, our first episode, me and Patricia, who we do this show together, our first episode, we discovered that all cats are Tory.
They are. They're so high status.
Even if you get you're a lefty politician in a room and explain this to them, or they pretty much will go through the same beats that you went through of like, yeah, that follows, yeah, and then they go, yeah, but I can't talk like this to people, even though I get it, they don't get it, so I'm going to lose credibility, and that's very important for left-wing politicians, particularly in the area of money and spending. I'm going to lose. That's why they introduced that fiscal credibility rule. Yeah, I'm going to lose my status and my standing and my chance to come to power. A lot of Labour voters they just wish Blair would come back. Please wear a suit, talk the language of neoliberalism, and everything will be fine again. The politicians are the same problem that they've always been, which is they have to talk in a way that's going to connect with people as they already are, and so it's people's understanding of how money works, which is at root of it the problem. Once the general consciousness changes, this is my view, once the general consciousness changes, they will have to come kicking and screaming, talking our language and ditching this household analogy and things like that. That's what I think is the way forward. The great thing about this being an audio recording is that you can't see Shappi's face, which is just, if I took a photo of it, the caption under the photo would be, "This is my can I go now" face.
No, I think the fact that you have engaged me on this it's no mean feat. You find it fun. You're like glowing. I can't wait to talk about modern monetary theory. No, but it's important. You're absolutely right, and I am now engaged. And if we ever talk about this again, I will have questions. All right, here's a question: if they could just make the money and make it available to schools that needed it, hospitals that needed it, what detrimental effect would that have on everything? That whole time, well, it's a license to print money. Like, everyone knows that you can't just print money.
Okay, I'll go backwards from everybody knows you just can't print money.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody that's a person in the private sector can't, because they'll go to jail.
Yeah.
For attempting to counterfeit money. But the government can and do.
Yeah, but would it then devalue things that already... Would it devalue money? Say if I've got a tenner and then they can just produce tenors whenever they want, does that devalue my tenner?
Well, they do produce £10 thousands whenever they want, and it doesn't.
Okay.
Is a quick answer. Another way to talk about it is, let's go back to your tour ticket that's selling for £16.50.
Bargain, by the way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was on eBay for a little bit less, but...
Okay.
But look, I wanted to shield you from that.
That's okay. I can take it.
How many of those can you print? Does the act of printing more of them make them worth less than £16.50? No, it doesn't. You're the monopoly issuer of it. You say what it's worth.
But if there was a finite amount of my tour tickets, would that devalue my tour?
Well, if you put the constraint on yourself, because remember, you can print as many of them as you want, right? If you decided, well, I know I can sell 150 of them in this particular venue, but I'm only going to print 100, well, what sense would that make?
Okay, but would people be less interested in something if it was readily available as and when they wanted and money was no object?
If you put 200 for sale at £16.50 and only 150 people bought them,
yeah,
they would still be worth £16.50. The result is empty seats, not devaluing of the ticket. You issued it. You say what it's worth. You say what it exchanges for. So just like this £10 note will always exchange for £10.
Yeah.
Because that's their promise.
Right. So if we said, okay, the money's always available, you can always print more tickets, then is it a case of, before, with this £16, I could afford a main meal at a high-end gastro pub? It's about 16 quid, isn't it? Anyway. But now everyone's got these pounds and there's loads of them. So it would cost me even more pounds to buy, like, now that meal in the pub would be £46.
I get what you're asking now.
Yes.
Right. I get it. Right. Okay. Because there are more pounds in circulation in everybody's pockets, does it make the pound buy less? Is that what you're saying?
That is exactly what I'm saying, yeah.
Well, okay. If you don't have any productive things for sale in pounds when you keep creating them, if it's not going to employ a teacher or a nurse or make something, then it's going to start to push the value down. But until you get to that point, until you get to zero unemployment, there's nothing to be done, there's nothing for sale. Until you get to that point, a pound spent is going to lead to a pound's worth of productivity, a pound's worth of goods and services. So that it's not a danger. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I'll ask you one more time.
Yes.
Any questions? You can say no, please go away.
I don't have any questions, but I do think that I could. Okay, I want to be honest with you. I am now going to listen to your podcast.
It's all been worth it.
Yeah, no, seriously. I think it's important, and you are very coherent, and you're not overcomplicating things.
If I can understand it, it's not too complicated.
No,
that's the way I look at it.
I do want to go and play with some Play-Doh now, though.
Yeah,
that's all right.
All right, thanks for your patience.
No, it was great. Thank you. Are you disappointed that I didn't ask more questions?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
No. I'm just curious about whether anything I was saying was landing, basically.
No, absolutely.
And I always think it does stimulate questions, and I actually think the questions that it stimulated in you about will the currency go worthless? Why is there austerity in that case? All those kind of things. These are the questions that come up really quickly when you start talking about modern money. So you're not alone.
It's good to know.
All right. Thanks for your time. You can get back to real life now.
Cheers. No, seriously, that was great. Cheers.
All right, Shappi Khorsandi, author and comedian. Thank you for being on the podcast.
That was great.
Okay, I better press record now.
Ha ha ha.
That was the MMT podcast with Patricia Pino and Christian Riley. Don't forget, you can support the show through Patreon, starting at $1 a month and get access to patron-only episodes. You can do that by going to patreon.com/MMT podcast. You can also find me on Twitter at MMT podcast, and you can find Patricia on Twitter at Patricia N. Pino. And you can email us at mmtpodcast@outlook.com. Thanks for listening, and we hope to hear from you. Yeah, the metaphor is starting to break apart at this point. No, I mean...
What's next? The rack?